David, as you might remember, is that I invited three kind of premier people from Maryland Public Television who were there from almost the beginning. And it was kind of fun. I was going to interview them separately, but I ended up doing it collectively because they all have shared memories. It was about the beginnings of Maryland Public Television that went on the air around 1969 in a little town called Owings Mills, Maryland, that, to be honest with you, was a farm. And the state of Maryland gave the Maryland Broadcasting Commission this plot of land, and Maryland Public Television was built, and people started coming in from all over the country. So I interviewed John Davis, who is the creator of and host of Motor Week, who was formerly the executive producer of Wall Street Week with Louis Rukeyser, which is one of the most popular finance shows on public television. And it was backed with Washington Week in Review. And those two shows on Friday nights were a powerhouse of broadcasting that brought in millions of viewers every Friday. And John will talk a little bit about both those programs, Motor Week and Washington Week in Review, and of course, his own show. And Washington Week in Review, Wall Street Week, and Motor Week. And then there's George Benemann. And George Benemann, again, one of the oldest survivors at Maryland Public Television, started off in the crew as a cameraman and a floor director, and ended up directing so many shows, including the Rukeyser Show. And he is now the Senior Vice President of Technology for Maryland Public Television. And he has a rich history of things that went on there. And then the other person who joined the group was Natalie Seltz. And Natalie came from Minneapolis Public Television. And she moved to Baltimore to land a job at Maryland Public Television as she heard it was starting. So the four of us talked about the early days of Maryland Public Television, some of the shows that were produced in the beginning, some of the people that we remember, including Warren Park, who was the program director, who was really like the station manager, who just formed so many things about public television, how he thought things should be done. He was brilliant at it. And he was my boss. He hired me as a producer to do a farm show. And no one could understand why, except that it turned out to be very successful for everyone. So that's what we're going to see. Hello, everybody. I'm Donald Thoms. And this is what we're calling public television oral history. Our friend David Leroy has come up with this idea to put on camera some of the old memories of the start of public television. I'm here in the studios of Maryland Public Television. They've been very gracious to allow us the time and the space to be here. And I have some extraordinary guests that I'm going to talk to tonight who have been at Maryland Public Television a very long time, and one of them has gone. But let me introduce you to them. This is John Davis of Motor Week.
Thanks, Donald.
This is George Benemann, who is the head of technology here at Maryland Public Television, and Natalie Seltz, who was one of the first employees here at Maryland Public Television. But you didn't start at Maryland Public Television. You started where?
I started in Minneapolis, St. Paul, Educational Television, it was called then, KTCA TV.
And what did you do there?
I did audio. I worked in marketing. Sesame Street was starting, and so was about to go on the air. I worked with the public relations people and development people. We went to local TV stores that sold televisions and get them to donate TVs into the neighborhood associations so the kids in the neighborhoods could watch Sesame Street.
Wow, that was the first community engagement.
Yes.
So you started this thing called public television. You started in it. What was it? What did you think it was?
I was not a good student in college. Dropped out most of the time, went to the theater in Minneapolis, St. Paul, went to the Tyrone Guthrie Theater on cheap student tickets. And then one time I was out with a bunch of friends, and the person who drove did weekend weather at a local TV station. And so we all had to go with them, and we were all sitting in there, and I went, oh, well, this is fascinating. So when I got back to Minneapolis, I called all the local TV stations, and one commercial station would talk to me after the election. I went in there, interviewed, asked about different things, because I didn't know anything about production. I wanted to be behind the scenes. And he said, go to public television, they take anybody.
Wow. Wow.
You're female, you're not going to make it into the union, which was true.
All right. So, but you started in public television. Did you know what it was? Did you understand it?
Yeah, I started watching it as soon as I went
Right.
to interview there.
Right.
And it was on Channel 2, which is much better than Channel 67,
Sure,
which started here.
Right, right.
And yeah, I was aware of it. I'd grown up in the area, and public radio and public television, educational radio and educational television
Right.
were very common in that area.
Right, right, right. So you came here, how and why?
I came here because when I worked at the Minneapolis St. Paul station, I did master control, and one time I looked in the wastebasket and there were all these slides that were from national educational television that were really good graphics.
Yeah.
And we had a hockey coach do our graphics on weekends. And I went to my boss and I said, so why don't we use these? And they said, oh, well, that's beyond me. You have to go to. I ended up talking to the president of the station, and I said, how come we don't use these? And he said, National Educational Television, the network, is the frosting, and we're the cake. And the cake is more important. And I said, but the frosting is what attracts you to buy the cake.
Right, 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 right.
I knew I was I wasn't going to last there long.
You were always asking questions, I remember.
It's the way you learn. It's the way you
Yeah,
learn.
I used to all know that we've all worked together for many, many years and all good friends. So you came to MPT, you followed someone here, right? Or,
No, I heard that there was a new station coming out, so
Okay.
something you only do when you're 22. You move across the country without a job. So I came here and interviewed and got a job in production, but the studios weren't completed. So I started we had office buildings down in St. Paul Street, Minneapolis, in Baltimore.
In Baltimore.
And so working there, that was boring. But there was a film being shot, one of the Maryland historical films being shot, so they needed someone to serve food. And,
Sure.
and
So how long were you in that office before this building was
I
built?
started there July 1st. We didn't move into here until, I think, end of August, September.
Okay.
No, it was earlier, because I came in August and it was.
Oh, okay.
So
were
you
here.
came in, George, you came in August
I came in
of
toward the end of
1969
69.
as what? What did you do?
Came as a camera operator because I, quote, had experience.
Right. As a camera operator.
Correct. See, the studios there was production assistants, camera operators, studio supervisors. Then there was directors and all.
Right.
So I came as a camera operator, which was a pay grade above production assistant.
Right. But you moved up.
Well, that was for about, everybody's moved. I moved up in about a week and a half.
We were all new.
There were a lot of, the studio crew, if it was filled, there were 24 of us. Well, if it's only 18, you move up. I mean, you fill spaces.
No, I guess you're right. But you, over the years you've been here, and I've been how long?
55.
55 years at Maryland Public Television, and you went from cameraman to... you
Cameraman
remember?
to studio supervisor to, well, I sort of worked in master control, but then there was like a production supervisor and then a director, and then it just goes all the way up to senior vice president.
But
Now
George
it's time
was a
to kick out.
director for
I
many
was a
years
director
on many of the programs.
and
Oh, yeah.
director.
Yeah.
No, I'm trying to think.
As
of
was
when
Natalie,
I
actually.
came, because I started in Master Control in '73. So I'm late bloomer compared to you guys.
Yeah, but we still
You
had,
came the same year
but
I
we
did.
still
You
had-
came in 73.
But we
Yeah.
still had live announcers then when
Yeah.
you were here.
Oh, yeah.
That's true.
That's true.
Yeah.
Oh,
That's
yes,
true.
for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now, when I came here, were you a director in 73 by then?
Sure.
Yeah, you don't know.
I don't know, Donald.
I usually
think
kind
so.
of know when because I
There were
started
what, eight
as
of us, eight directors?
At one point, there were
Yeah.
like 8 or 9
eight
directors.
directors.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
We were busy. There were 3 studios,
3
2
studios
shifts
humming.
a day. We were working 5 to 7 days a week.
When I came here, I thought it was like Dorothy seeing Emerald City for the first time.
I totally agree with
You
you.
walked in, 3 studios humming, 300 people in this building,
That's right.
the original
Yeah.
building.
Region, yeah.
And it was not round the clock, but it was 2 full shifts a day.
It was a-
Oh,
it was a
yeah. We
factory.
were very, very
Yeah,
busy.
it was
It
a
was
factory.
everything we touched turned to gold.
Yeah, we did.
Almost everything succeeded. It was amazing.
Yeah, but when I came here, I was in master control, and I couldn't believe the fact that the 3 studios were busy day and night, not on weekends, and costumes and plays and all sorts of how-to shows, plus instructional television.
Yes.
Was here.
And we often
ITV,
don't,
yeah.
we forget they were a big part
They got a
of
third.
the operation.
They were part of why the station was
Right,
started.
right.
Was because the local stations were doing instructional television for classroom use. They wanted out of it. So the Department of Education and the newly formed whatever
Public
it was,
Broadcasting Commission or
thing,
whatever.
got together. So ITV, instructional television, was here and very important part
Yeah.
of our beginning for a long time
Yeah.
And they made more money than
than we did.
we did.
They made more money.
Well, they were funded.
Yeah, they,
So, John, you came here as what?
I came here ostensibly as producer of Wall Street Week with Louis Rukeyser. They had been on the air 2 years, went on in 71, but 73 was going to be the first year where they were going to be on year round. And Ann Darlington, the creator and all, had decided she wanted someone else to help her do the producing. And frankly, she needed, Friday nights were just chaotic because this was basically a live show every week, going to be. So I was brought in to kind of give her some support in that area. And I had been in New York, but not in broadcasting. I had worked my way through college in radio and television, but I'd gone off on Wall Street, and I was actually on Wall Street, and that's why I got the job. She ran an ad in the New York Times that said she was looking for somebody with a business background, which I had, and some television background. And so I looked at that and said, that looks very interesting. Came down here, and there were 200 applicants, and I got lucky. So,
Wow.
but when I'm not kidding, when I walked in here, I felt like I was being kidnapped, being driven here in a taxi cab from where I was staying in
Yeah.
Pikesville,
Yeah.
down this country lane. You go up this driveway, and
That's
here
true.
is this
That's
incredible facility. And what we were all talking about, so many people inside of it. I mean, and equipment I had never seen before, except maybe on some movie about,
Sure, sure.
Hollywood productions. Big booms, camera dollies. Every studio was filled with cameras and lights and people. And it was pretty amazing to me. I mean, I had worked in a small, station in North Carolina, my last gig down there. And, we had 2 cameras and you did it.
Was it public television or commercial?
No, I had done a little bit of work with public television at the University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill, but just as some talent. No, it was a commercial station, an NBC affiliate.
Yeah, I remember. I worked for a commercial station too, and when I came here, I thought it was Camelot.
Yeah.
I'd never seen anything quite like it. But also,
No.
having worked for a commercial station, the commercial station's bottom line was making money, period. And this wasn't like this here. There was a mission of programming, education, and the fact that you would go out into the community and also relate to the community. Well, that's not done anyplace else. And to me, that's what public television does best.
Well, the state had funded MPT to the point where it said, we're giving you employees, we're giving you equipment, go make programming that's relevant to the population in the state of Maryland and beyond, if you can. And Warren Park, who was the first director of programming,
bless him.
that was his philosophy, is to produce something that was that the local audience would like, but then to see if it would go out to an expanded audience, either up and down the East Coast on what was then the Eastern Educational Network, or to this new thing called PBS that was forming in Washington.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that, because I mentioned that to George a little bit, because when I was in Master Control on Friday nights was
Right.
was crazy.
Right.
Because there was news wrap.
Yep. Here,
Yeah.
3 shows.
Right. So then there was the weather show, aviation weather.
Right.
And then there was Wall Street.
Right.
So news wrap was live, and you put that on the air. It
were
was,
all
it's
live.
probably right
Yeah,
in
they
this.
were all live.
They were all
Right.
live.
Yes.
They were all live.
But then
Initially.
when I got into work, I had to call someone on the EEN line.
Yeah, Eastern
Correct.
Educational
Correct.
Because that's where I was feeding aviation weather. Is that right?
They had the lines.
They had the line.
They had the lines.
Right.
And so then.
People
Main-
don't realize, I mean, today it's all microwaves,
No, of
but it
course.
was physical phone lines.
No, exactly
And
right. So I would
And
talk to,
microwave.
to Ed, whoever
Yeah.
was on the line, and say, "You all ready?" And so then I would send up aviation weather. But then I thought I'd take them off the air. And was Wall Street? I thought directly to PBS.
No, it went to, originally it was on EEN.
Yeah.
The first season was EEN.
Yeah, but then
there
it
was
went
no
to-
PBS.
Yes.
PBS didn't exist at that
PBS
point.
didn't exist.
But
Yeah,
I don't
when I got
remember-
here, PBS was on the air.
Yeah, PBS, because when I got here in '73, it was a PBS show.
Yeah.
But it had started 2 years before.
But we used the EEN line
Yeah.
to feed
To get out
to
of
get to
Still?
PBS.
Okay.
That was all
We-
up
we
and
weren't-
down the East Coast.
We weren't satellite uplinking at that
No,
point.
that's right.
That didn't begin
That
until
came later.
81.
Yeah.
That's crazy. I mean, because I remember all of it, but just the timeline is fascinating, because there were all these feeders, CEN and all those regional distribution agencies, before PBS, and because I started working for PBS in '93, but now it was a big established, network. Although you can't say network around PBS. So John, you moved from Motor Week, Wall Street Week. And before I go to Motor Week, I have one funny story is that George was on vacation, and I directed Wall Street Week, and things were moving just smoothly, and we lost a camera live.
Well,
Better than the
That-
lights.
it was either a camera or audio.
And
lights.
it was so weird
Or lights, right.
because the control room was now in panic.
Yeah.
Everyone's screaming, and engineers were in my ear screaming. I said, "Folks, stop! Everyone, sit down, please. We can do this show with 3 cameras." And then God must have said, "Let's teach this guy a lesson." And we lost the second one.
Well, remember, one of the cameras,
only for a minute. But
but one of the cameras was behind
I
the
know.
set, because the set was designed with all these doors so you could shoot at 360.
Yeah.
Which was very innovative at
Of
the
course it
time.
was, yeah.
And if you lost the camera that was back there, you lost most of the action.
No, I do remember, and I guess it was Helene who was on camera, because when Lewis was saying, "Now let's go meet our
Right.
special guest."
Got up.
With Natalie, I'll talk about that in a second. But of course, though, usually would switch cameras.
Right.
But at this point, that camera wasn't there.
Well, then you stand up
So
and go
Helene
back.
actually, I said, "Helene, you're going to have to pull out, pet up, and slide over." And I said, "You okay?" She went. And she did it. She didn't miss a beat. But and just speaking of Miss Smith, Natalie was Miss Smith on Wall Street Week. One of you tell our guys
I'll let
who
Natalie
that
say.
person was.
It was a creation of Ann Truax Darling.
Yes,
Yes,
Ann Darlington
it was her,
created
yes.
it because it was a live show on Friday nights, and the microphones were all wire. And Lou, as you were talking about, had to walk from one side to the other from the. Anyhow, so it was a huge walk, carrying his little microphone cord the whole way. One of the things I enjoyed doing was floor directing. I loved being a stage manager, and
was
so
She was.
my favorite job. And so Ann Darlington came to me and said, and at the time I was skinny and dark hair and could wear clothes, and said, "How would you like to be on-air stage manager for Wall Street Week?" And she explained what it was going to do, and I went, "Oh, what the hell? Why not?" And it was a part-time job, and it wouldn't interfere because at 10 o'clock on Friday nights, I directed news wrap. So I could work, be off for 3 hours or 4 hours, and then work again.
Huh.
So that's what I did. And so that, and for the first, 5 or 6
Yeah.
years, there was always at least twice a year, 2 or 3 times a year, where there was a reason why my role
minimum.
existed.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
And besides that, besides making sure Lou didn't trip and fall,
Yeah, but that meant though, if someone's mic went out,
I would
you
replace
could
it.
walk in and you weren't a
And
surprise.
she looked, exactly.
It wasn't-
That
elegant.
was the whole concept.
that
She
was
looked
the-
like she
yeah.
belonged
That was
there.
brilliant.
And
It
it was
was.
a way
It
of
was brilliant.
introducing it and doing all of that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
it worked out well. Plus, then I also, part of my job was Lou didn't meet the guest until that he walked into the studio before we were live. So we were in the conference room prior with the panelists and the guest. And my job was to get them all talking to each other, which was a unique challenge at times because the panelists frequently just wanted to do their own thing. And then you'd have to start getting them to actually converse.
Her job was to get them to loosen up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because most of these people, unlike now where you have 24-hour news, most of these people that came down from New York had never been on television. And when you put them in front of even an audience, they were just stiff as they could be. So there was a whole process to get them loosened up. The producer, and usually myself, would go up and do a pre-interview with them and kind of go over all the rules, and you're talking to a bunch of intelligent relatives, not to forget the cameras, and Natalie would take over when they walked in, and it was a whole process.
And the set was designed so that the people only looked at other people. You weren't staring at cameras.
Yes, yeah.
And that was all part of all of it, was to be able to put them at ease. So it was
Who was the first director of Wall
Steve.
Street Week?
Steve McCullough.
So all of
It's
that
all
was
his
designed that way.
Steve and Ann worked together
Yep.
very well to create an environment that was a success.
And
Yeah, but it was
Michael-
at one point the most popular
designed
show
set?
on public television.
It was always
Who designed
the
set?
designed
Michael,
the set?
Michael, what was
The
Michael?
Michael Deal was
Michael
the
Deal.
set designer.
He did, and that set was redesigned several times, but they kept that
That
basic
same,
design.
Same floor
that
plan.
same concept was
Yeah.
always there. It was it was a
That window
brilliant
opens.
idea.
Yeah.
Huh?
Over your right shoulder, that should
Yeah.
open.
Oh,
The
that's right.
set
That's
was
right.
designed-
That's right.
You could
To
shoot at
John straight.
360.
You
Yeah.
could shoot John, so that
Yeah.
would
So that
that's
you,
what
so everybody was at ease. The only one who always looked at the camera was Lou, but everybody was
Sure,
at
sure.
ease, and he
Right,
was
right.
the only one with
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Joyce, what other shows do you remember directing that you were really deeply involved in?
Well, there was the Happy New Year USA. Those were great fun. The live from Baltimore with 3 remote units and things for a couple hours. That was fun.
we did tennis.
We did the
Oh,
early
my
stage
goodness,
of tennis.
We covered a lot of
We
tennis
did
around the
we did
up and down the
tennis.
East Coast.
Tom Barnett
right.
directed.
Ocean
I didn't
City,
direct tennis, but
Maryland.
tennis, yeah. Even when Salisbury Microwave went out, we did
Yeah.
radio, tennis
Jimmy
radio.
Connors.
Jimmy Connors.
When he was a
Boy, oh
little
boy.
kid.
Rod
Yeah.
Lavers.
Yeah. The Happy New Year USA was, because I
That
was
was a
one of
big
the
show.
producers,
That was big.
but that was huge because we started off at Ethel's place
Right.
downtown,
The Meyerhoff.
and then the Meyerhof, and then
the
there was
harbor.
another, there
The
was
harbor.
the
Inner
harbor for
yeah,
it.
yeah, and we opened the Inner Harbor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We did all
Well, we
of it.
lost lights at Ethel's place right prior to
We don't want to
air.
talk about that.
And the engineer said to me, he says, "We've lost lights." And I said, "What?" And he said, "We have to tell Michael." I said, "No, let's not tell Michael Starr yet. Let's."
He was the producer.
He was executive producer. Let's get these
Well,
lights
but you know,
on.
it was interesting because when the dimmer went out and our LD, which was Ken Billington, called his friend in New York who was going to a party, and he goes,
Yes.
okay, you can do one thing, and it's either going to save the patient or the patient's going to die. So it was literally open it up, jump this, the lights came back.
That's right.
And after that, Ken has never done a show without 2 consoles.
That's right. No, I do remember that because
that was like,
yeah, because I think
Thank
the host opened from Ethel's place, and I'm trying to remember if we switched him to the Meyerhof, which is right across the street, or if we did him with one light.
we were ready with one light just
Yeah,
in
we
case.
did. Yeah, and so,
We had a
but you know,
follow
that's live television, and the reason why I just love live television so much. So you did those and the tennis.
I didn't direct tennis.
You didn't direct tennis.
Tom
No,
Barnett
I
directed
produced
tennis.
it.
You
Tom
produced
Burnett-
It
Tom
was
Burnett.
wonderful.
Yeah.
What was the time? We
was not involved in that
We
at
were in
all.
Salisbury,
Salisbury.
once.
Well,
and
we
the-
also did the women's Olympic volleyball.
Oh, yeah.
We did that down there. And then we did the tennis, 2-3 years in a row?
2-3.
I've forgotten. With Jimmy Connors.
Yeah.
I,
Rod Laver. I mean, it
forgot
was.
about those.
It was extraordinary.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the
It was-
men's and ladies were on the same. Billie Jean King, all these.
I mean, it was
Which
very
we-
flexible. If an idea came up and Warren Park thought we could fit it into our schedule, we did it.
And we never asked about money.
No.
No, you never did. But speaking of Warren Park, what's interesting is that I got promoted to a producer, and the job I got promoted, the show I got promoted to was up on the farm, and
That worked out, Donald.
and so Warren said, "You've got the job," and I think that's just great, But I was happy I got promoted, and I still remember, I went, my good friend Glenn Tolbert, was the writer on the show, and all of a sudden I was working for Everett because they put it under News and Public Affairs. So I was working for Everett.
Yeah.
We go in that night with the staff. You've got two black guys who were born and raised in Baltimore City.
Had you ever been on a farm before?
Yeah, my parents lived on
School
My
visits.
parents were on farms, and but however, the show 6 months later, Warren called me and said, "By the way, Up on the Farm is now showing up in the ratings." So I can't complain. So at one point, I kept saying, "What was Warren thinking?" But clearly, he knew something I didn't.
Genius.
So you went from
He wanted you to stretch. That was one of his things.
Yeah.
I mean, don't get complacent with what you're doing. Try something new.
Yeah, I do remember that one of the stars of Up on the Farm left, and I was just so angry. And I went into his office and I was complaining. He says, "Oh, so all of a sudden, this is about you." I never did it again. No, he would. No, he would let you stretch. But does anybody remember the 9-step?
Oh, God.
Oh,
Those
my
critiques.
God.
Yes.
We used to call them internals.
Yes.
Critiques.
Come on.
Oh,
Nine, come on,
What that
Donald. That's
meant
what
was
let's
that
say
if
name
you
all
had
the
an
dwarfs.
idea for a show,
Yeah.
there were
go through
9 steps to get it
On the
actually
air.
on the air.
Yeah.
And
That's very good. I'd forgotten.
oh my Lord, because Ann Darlington was the first step,
Yeah.
because you'd write a proposal. I'd never written anything, so writing proposal. She sent it back 4 times. If I did a gospel
If
show,
you got by Ann, you were on your way.
I was on my way. Yeah, but those kind of that's what I learned about, about Warren Park, and we used to have something called a credit committee.
Oh. If you were
Boy,
replaceable,
you really are. Yeah.
you didn't get a credit.
Oh, right.
I know.
No
Yeah.
craft service people. So not the crew, audio. No, only producers, directors, writers, graphic artists.
Exactly right.
Right.
And Whitney LeBlanc, who directed Our Street,
Our Street.
the first drama based on African American
Right,
family
right.
living in
Our
Baltimore.
Street, yeah.
Anyhow, Whitney went in and fought for that because he had been in theater for decades, and he fought to
And what did he fight for?
to get credit
Credits.
for people who worked on the production staff.
Okay.
And he succeeded.
No, these days I see credits, of
Oh,
people who don't work on
longer
shows
than
at
the
all.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But when you look, you mentioned, I mean, in our large studio at the time, one half we were doing Our Street, this soap opera, and the other side was Wall Street.
That's right.
So one production would end at 3:34. The other one's live to the nation at 7:30.
That's right.
Set goes up, gets
Yeah.
a little bit lit.
Was
and you're
Our Street set in Studio A?
Yep.
Studio A, the back of the studio, other end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a row house.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Multiple
yeah. No,
floors.
because I knew some of the actors and
Oh, yeah.
from it,
Yeah.
and it was incredible.
Oh, yeah.
I don't think that was before anything.
But-
an entire black drama.
Oh, yeah.
But
there were other ones
it
too.
didn't show in Salisbury. We didn't show our urban affairs shows in Salisbury.
I didn't know that.
I did not know that.
I did not know that. That I had no idea.
Salisbury on Maryland's eastern shore.
on
Oh, yeah.
That
Maryland,
transmitter.
When we had 2 transmitters,
Yes.
certain programs were shipped down, and they had their little 3/4-inch deck, and
I can't imagine they had the control to do that.
each transmitter had 4 engineers.
No. I mean,
They had a film chain
no.
for
Well,
slides.
they had the editorial decision making.
Oh no, the taste was sent
that
from here.
was-
It
that
wasn't
was decided up here.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Different times.
Different times.
Different times. So, John, tell me. So, there you are with Wall Street Week, the most popular show on PBS, on public television.
It was popular. Huh?
It was, no, I'm going to tell you what.
That
Sesame
and
Street.
Washington Week Review
Yeah.
and Wall Street Week were must-see
Ws.
TV.
The
The
Ws.
W's every
That's right.
Friday night between 7 and 8.
So I can remember sitting in Master Control, and you would walk around and just talk to people about a car show. What would you like to see in a car show? And I'm thinking, that's interesting. He's asking
Yeah.
the common guy. And I'm thinking, he's going to do a show, huh? And then I don't know how long it took you after those things, but how did you start that show and why?
Ann got promoted, and I was promoted to executive producer of Wall Street Week. And Warren called me in, and he said, "It's time you stopped riding on somebody else's coattails." That's pretty much what he said. Probably a little nicer, but not much. And he said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I'll get a couple ideas." And I did 2 pilots. I did a financial pilot called It's Only Your Money, looking at people's individual finances, because
Right.
times were fairly tough at the time because there was a lot of inflation. And then I had always, because I was a car nut from the South, grew up with, gasoline in your veins, I wanted to bring the automotive magazine to television because nobody had done that. And so I did 2 pilots, and we did Motor Week. And we searched and found the name was available. It was 1978. We did the pilot in Studio A, now the Kaplan Studio, and it then sat on the shelf for 3 years. So we showed it to people, took it to events. I had tried to hire someone to host it, but we couldn't afford it. A good friend of mine in Washington, John Harder, I wanted him to do it, but we had no money to pay John. John was on one of the commercial stations down there. And so I did it, and I remember the director of programming at Detroit looked at the pilot and looked at me and said, "Don't quit your day job."
Nice.
But we pursued it. And on July the 5th, 1981, Warren called me into his office and said, "Well, Boston's going to do a car show." Because Boston had already, shall I say, usurped the home show idea from us, because we had Old Houseworks first, and they were doing This Old House.
Oh, that's
Which
right.
name we gave them.
Which name we gave
We
them.
openly, freely.
Yeah, they asked us for the name, and Warren gave them the name, and I think he regretted that already. And he said, "Can you be on the air in January?" when they were going to go on the air. And I said, "I'll be on the air in 6 weeks." We didn't quite make that, but we did go on the air in October of '81.
Wow.
And we thought, this is going to be something fun to do 5 years, for 5 years, and here we are 44 years later. But the idea was to do not a car show for car enthusiasts, but one for people. Yeah, they like cars, but also they have to live with cars.
Sure.
So we kind of married car magazines like Motor Trend and Car and Driver with a little bit of popular mechanics, with a little bit of lifestyle, which was just starting to come out both in magazines and more so on television. And as far as concept, Entertainment Tonight was new.
Oh, right.
And it was a magazine show. And locally, we had Evening Magazine done by Channel 13. And that was a show with lots of different segments that could be moved around. And none of them were so long that you would bore people to death.
Right.
And that was the idea we adopted, and we've kept it. Actually, the format of the show today is very similar to what it was in
And
1981.
did it start out as a national show?
We were a regional show. We started out up and down the East Coast on the Eastern Educational Network.
From the very beginning?
From the very beginning. I think we had 70 stations or something like that. We had a lot of dozens of stations from the very beginning. And it was actually quite a while before we went on to PBS itself. But we were, I guess when microwaving came in, when uplinking
Satellites.
came in, satellites
Right.
came in, we started uplinking it on our own. But yeah.
And how many times do you get asked when you're going to stop?
My wife has stopped asking. My wife Cheryl, by the way, who worked here in programming, and she started at the same station that Natalie did
Yeah.
in St.
Oh, I
Paul.
didn't know that. Okay.
They actually worked for a gentleman named Schwarzwalder, who really is credited with starting PBS.
Oh, that's okay.
And he's the one who said the
I know.
frosting
Yeah,
on
I
the
know.
cake.
Oh, right, yeah.
But yeah, I forgot what you asked me.
That's
but
right.
Anyway,
Because I think in the end, as we're kind of wrapping, this is a fascinating conversation, is that I think I left and went to a commercial station, and had fun, but the idea was you simply had to make shows that made money, and outside of that, they didn't care about anything else.
Yeah.
And it's the fact that I worked for this place and PBS twice that made me realize that was what I should be doing. It sounds like, all of you the same thing, is that it's public television.
But just a different angle, we were talking about some of the early things, that when we started aviation weather, it started because we had a videotape supervisor, Vic Turner, who said, we need to get weather information out to pilots.
Yeah.
And Warren said, do a show. So we did, and we were on EEN. Vic was the first talent. We eventually we got meteorologists from Flight Services. We got underwriting from Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association. And the show did well for a number of years, then turned around and became AM weather, and ran for a number of years. So, if you think of what we premiered, and yet because of an in-house idea like Motor Week or something, that no one ever said, you can't do this. You have a good
That's
idea?
exactly right.
Let's make it work.
No,
it was,
that's
you
right.
had to
And we
make a
did.
good case for doing it.
Yeah.
Of course.
But then it was done.
But George is touching on something that I think is incredibly important that people need to remember going forward. Maryland Public Television, or the Maryland Center for Public Broadcasting, was the incubator for so much TV that everyone enjoys today. Wall Street Week really was the embryo for financial television that's just 24/7 now. AM Weather Channel, all of that came from people that were associated with our earliest weather programmings. And there are other examples there too, where we have spawned this stuff nationwide. Motor Week is generally considered, starting automotive television in this country. I'm not so sure that's 100% sure, but the point is we were the incubator for a lot of what people stream and watch today.
And it didn't come easy. I mean, the fact that, you had an idea for a show and one would say, just go and do the show. Well, you had to prove that this show was going to work. Because you think about it, when I think about aviation weather going to the mornings of AM weather, I did that show up on the farm that moved to Farm Day.
Right, exactly.
That all of a sudden it was packaged as two 15-minute programs that were very successful.
They were.
Going across the
many
country.
times every day.
Yeah.
The atmosphere here was very supportive of all of that, and the talent was available.
That's true. Anything you want to say about public television that you haven't said?
I hope it continues. I'm not sure.
Natalie, what does that mean?
People aren't watching.
Linear
People are
television.
streaming.
Yeah.
I'm one of the last few people who actually still has only cable in my house. But I have many friends who don't have cable.
I don't watch TV at all.
And they only watch streaming. They don't watch any of the broadcast stations in their area.
Yeah. What about you, George?
I missed the Master Control, where when shows were coming down, you got to see the slates, which were always wonderful. For Wall Street Week, we'd always do things you can't do on television now with the crew, when they're doing the beginning with the slate.
Yeah.
And it was less, and people, Master Control directors are like, well, who's there? Oh, let's see that. What's Donna doing? What's Iris doing? What's that?
Iris.
Then when we did a show out of, I'm not going to figure that time cue, Tim. I can't read that. When you had the new show with Edwin Newman out of Buffalo.
Yeah.
Classic floor director with the stogie in his mouth, holding the slate, and the back time. Well, those were just wonderful things. Now it's this electronic thing that says,
That's because you're the techie.
No, it was just fun. It was fun videos. It's like sort of going behind
being
the curtain,
backstage,
going behind backstage and seeing the fun. That's
What do you, John?
Live TV, period.
Yep, absolutely.
There is nothing like it, because whatever happens, you got to cope with it and keep going, and you can't go back and redo it. Now, I haven't done a lot of live TV in decades, but when I do get a chance to do it, I absolutely love it. And it's really what this medium's all about. here, now, instantaneous.
There's nothing else to say. Thank you, guys. This was more
was
fun than
fun.
I thought it was going to be. This was great. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.
Pleasure.